At the family gathering, my parents announced, "Lila is moving in with you, her partner Jake, and the kids." I remained silent as they arrived with her belongings. A stranger opened my old door, and I'm called Alex, having just turned 29. If you were to ask my parents, they would likely describe me as the difficult child in the family, not because of rebellion or negligence, but quite the opposite. I worked hard, paid my own bills, and kept my life in order. Yet, to them, this merely made me the go-to problem solver, the one expected to step in whenever another family member stumbled. And by another, I mean my older sister, Lila. At 32, her lifestyle hardly reflected her age. She had 3 children, Noah, 8, Mia, 6, and little Ava, 3, but motherhood never seemed to prompt her to mature. Her partner, Jake, 34, shared her aversion to responsibility. Together, they never held on to a stable living situation for more than a few weeks, always armed with excuses for avoiding rent. Somehow, they managed to convince my parents that their struggles were not of their own making. They had a talent for twisting every situation to portray themselves as the victims. Her boss was always out to get her, his employer was envious of his abilities, their landlords were cruel, and their roommates were unbearable. Meanwhile, they floated through life, bouncing from my parents' home to whichever friend was naive enough to offer them a couch, 3 kids in tow, leaving chaos behind. I learned early on that a peaceful, stable life required distance from them. My apartment, a hard-earned 2-bedroom I bought after years of saving, was my refuge. I decorated it simply but comfortably: clean lines, organized spaces, nothing excessive, just tranquility. The kind of tranquility that was impossible to maintain with 5 additional people, 3 of whom were under the age of 8. It wasn't easy, though. My parents often dragged me into their messes, wielding guilt about supporting family or my good fortune in securing a solid job. "The kids need stability," they would say, as if I alone could provide what their parents couldn't. That's why I had worked hard to set boundaries, to signal that I wasn't their safety net. But as I would soon discover, my parents never truly respected those boundaries, they merely bided their time until they could ignore them entirely. Everything came to a head at a family dinner. I should have noticed the signs the moment I stepped into their house. My mother was overly affectionate, my father unusually quiet, and Lila and Jake barely met my gaze. The kids were oddly subdued, though Noah kicked my chair throughout dinner. Trouble was brewing, but I couldn't grasp its magnitude. The meal began innocuously enough, with routine chatter sprinkled with my mother's subtle jabs about my infrequent visits. "You know, Alex, your nieces and nephew hardly recognize you anymore," she said, peering at me over her wineglass. "You should come by more often." I mostly nodded, my eyes fixed on my plate, eager for the evening to end. Just when I thought I might escape unscathed, my mother set down her fork, clasped her hands on the table, and dropped the bombshell. "So, Lila," she cooed in that syrupy tone she reserved for unwelcome news, "your sister and her family will be staying with you for a while." I nearly choked on my food. The air thickened with their expectation that I would simply agree, but I held my tongue, sitting there, staring at them, waiting for the full story because there was always more. "Sure enough," she continued, "she's hit a rough patch recently, and you have that lovely space all to yourself." She reasoned as if it were pure logic. "It's practical, you can help her out, and she won't burden them." Because heaven forbid my parents might insist that Lila and Jake take responsibility for their choices, no, that duty fell to me, it seemed. Still, I remained silent, observing their pitch like a slow-motion train wreck. "Yeah," my dad finally chimed in, adding his 2 cents. "It's not like you're struggling, and they just need a stable place to get back on their feet." That's when Lila interjected, "Just a couple of months," she purred, her words sounding too rehearsed. "And we can help out around your place too." A blatant lie, we all knew Lila and Jake wouldn't lift a finger. They barely managed their own chaos, let alone 3 children properly. I had seen their previous apartment once, toys scattered like landmines, dishes crusted with weeks-old food, laundry piles that seemed to multiply overnight. Yet, I didn't flinch. I just dipped my head slightly, as if contemplating it. I had sold the apartment, the one that some new person now owned, completely unaware of what was about to unfold. I wouldn't stop them, not yet. I wanted them to figure out what their little plan had gotten them into. The days leading up to that weekend felt agonizingly slow. Every time I thought about what was going to happen, a smile crept onto my face, but I kept my cool around my parents. I didn't want them to suspect anything. Instead, I let everything unfold just as I had envisioned it, a slow-motion crash that I could observe from the sidelines. Saturday arrived, and I spent the day away from my old apartment, tackling tasks I had been putting off for weeks. I treated myself to breakfast at my favorite diner, browsed a local bookstore, and even got a fresh haircut. My new condo across town was smaller but entirely mine, with no family knowing its location. It was perfect timing. My parents would arrive at the apartment ready to drop off Lila's family's belongings, and soon they would realize something was very, very wrong. Around noon, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, so I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, it rang again, and this time I picked up. "Hi," I said, trying to sound casual. "Alex." My mom's voice came through, sharp with annoyance. "What's going on?" I could hear my dad in the background, his voice rising, along with the sounds of children crying. They weren't angry yet, just confused, as if they had stumbled into the wrong place. "What do you mean?" I asked, feigning confusion. "We just got here." My mom continued, her voice shaky. "What's this? The apartment's gone? The landlord says it was sold weeks ago, and someone new lives here now." I couldn't help it, my mouth turned into a grin. "Oh really? That's strange." "I didn't know," I replied, pretending to be the bewildered son who had no part in this. "I guess I should have mentioned it earlier." My father's tone sliced through the air, rough with irritation. "What's happening, Alex? Why didn't you warn us? You said Lila could stay, and now we're stranded here with her stuff and 3 overtired kids." It took all my strength not to burst out laughing. I could hear Lila's frantic voice in the background, trying to grasp what was happening, while Jake was swearing loudly, and the kids were all wailing now. It was pure delight to my ears. "Listen, I'm not sure what to say," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "I thought you all knew I left that place weeks ago. Sold it off. Didn't think I had to bring it up since, well, it didn't matter to me anymore." A short silence fell over the line. "What do you mean, sold it?" my mom asked, her voice shaky as if she were struggling to comprehend it. "You got rid of your apartment and didn't even tell us?" "Yep," I said, stretching out my words. "It was a quick decision, to be honest. Didn't want to make it a big deal, but yeah, I'm out. Fresh start and all that." My dad's voice climbed higher. "So what do we do now, Alex? You can't just dump this on us. Lila had her plans, and we've already loaded her stuff. The kids are tired and hungry. Don't you think we deserve a heads up?" I leaned back in my chair, fighting to hide the grin creeping onto my face. I was soaking this up. "You know, I really thought you'd be aware," I said, drawing it out. "I figured you were clued in. I tend to keep things to myself, you know how I am. Maybe I should have called you when I moved, but honestly, it didn't seem like a big deal. You didn't ask, and I didn't say." The frustration was thick on their end of the call. I could hear Ava's piercing wail in the background, Nia demanding a snack, and Noah complaining loudly about being bored. My mom's voice now carried a hint of despair, as if she had been completely blindsided. "But you told us you were happy there. You said you liked your apartment." "Sure, I did," I answered smoothly, tossing in just enough nonchalance to sound unbothered. "But things change, I guess." I didn't plan to let it go like that, but the deal was too good to pass up. A heavy silence settled for a moment, interrupted only by Lila muttering faintly in the distance and Jake's colorful cursing. My dad spoke up again, his voice quivering with fury. "Why didn't you tell us, Alex?" he demanded, his words sharp and through the peephole. My heart raced. It was them, my parents, Lila, Jake, and the 3 kids. And get this, their stuff. Their minivan was parked out front, crammed with boxes and bags stacked high, like a scene straight out of a cheesy sitcom. For a moment, I just stood there, gaping at them through the tiny lens, feeling a twisted kind of joy. They had actually tracked me down. The kicker? They had no clue I lived here now. They thought they were just rolling up to my new place, but they were about to stumble right into a showdown. I eased the door open slowly, keeping myself steady, cool, and in control. "Alex," my mom's voice came first, shaky and almost pleading. "We tried calling you, but you didn't answer. We figured out where you're staying now." I lifted an eyebrow. "Oh, did you? How'd you manage that?" Before I could even process her response, my dad jumped in, his tone prickly. "We need to talk. You've got to fix this. You said Lila could stay here, and now she's got her things and the kids. We've got nowhere else to go." Behind them, Noah was running in circles on my lawn, Mia was sitting sullenly on a suitcase, and Ava was asleep in Jake's arms, her chubby face tear-streaked. I leaned against the doorframe, lazily folding my arms across my chest. "Here's the deal, though, isn't it? I never said Lila and her family could move in here." My dad's eyes widened, and I could sense his temper fraying. "Come on, Alex, don't turn this into a bigger mess. You can't just ditch us like this. We drove all this way, and now you're just going to say no to helping your sister? What kind of brother does that? What kind of uncle?" Lila, hovering just past my parents, shot me a hard stare. I could practically see her brain scrambling to piece things together right then and there. "This is insane, Alex," she snapped. "You told me we could move in, and now you're pretending you don't even recognize that we've been in your life long enough for you to act decent about this. The kids are exhausted, Ava's been crying all day." "Is that right?" I said, holding back a smirk. "You really think you can just stroll into my place like it's some kind of motel? All 5 of you?" I could pinpoint the exact moment they realized they had messed up big time. The understanding crept in slowly, but it hit them like a freight train. I was here, this apartment was mine, my true home, and they had shown up with Lila's bags and children, banking on a free pass. Lila's cheeks flushed bright red with fury, and Jake stepped forward, his face dark with anger. "What's this, Alex? You're really going to pull this on us after everything? What about my kids?" I stayed silent for a few moments, watching their faces twist from bewilderment to irritation and finally to shame. This was it, the moment they realized they had been outsmarted. I stepped closer to them, my voice steady. "Look, I don't know how to say this any clearer, this is my apartment. I didn't sell it, I didn't hand it over. I'm not giving out a free spot for anyone, not anymore, especially not for 5 people in a 2-bedroom apartment. Where did you even think everyone would sleep?" I could tell my parents were struggling to wrap their heads around my words. My mom looked like she wanted to argue, but she held back. The thought that I, Alex, the one they always pushed around, was now blocking their path was too much for her to swallow. "You tricked us, Alex," my dad snarled. "You tricked us about everything. You knew this would happen, and now you're just leaving us to sort out your sister's mess. Your nieces and nephew are suffering because of your games." I shrugged. "I didn't trick you, you just didn't ask the right questions. And maybe my nieces and nephew are suffering because their parents refused to take responsibility for their own lives." Lila pushed forward now, hands planted on her hips, glaring hard. "You're not even a real brother or uncle. I'm family, Alex, and you're just going to toss me aside like this? What happened to sticking together? What about my children? Don't you care about them at all?" I stared at her, blank-faced. "I'm not tossing you out, I'm just not swinging the door wide open for you. And I do care about your kids enough to hope that someday they have parents who actually provide for them." But I didn't flinch. I was so done. I had dealt with their sneaky games for years, and this was when I would finally reclaim my space, my peace, and my life. The officer who stepped out of the patrol car was a tall woman with short, clipped brown hair and a no-nonsense vibe. She looked at me first, then at my parents, Lila, Jake, and the children, who were now fidgeting awkwardly on the doorstep. They looked like kids caught sneaking into a place they didn't belong, ironically fitting. "Evening," the officer said, her voice strong but civil. "I hear there's a problem here." I nodded, my tone cool but with a bite. "Yes, officer. These folks," I waved at my parents, sister, and her family, "are trespassing. They showed up at my place expecting to move in without my consent. I've told them to leave over and over, and now I'm worried they might try to push their way inside. The officer glanced at my parents, then at Lila and Jake, taking in the 3 children with a slight frown. Is that right? She asked, her voice fair but straightforward. My parents paused, clearly reluctant to admit their mistake, but the facts were already laid bare. Lila spoke up first, her voice thick with annoyance and denial. He's making it up, she snapped, arms folded tightly. He asked us here. We came to move in like he promised, and now he's trying to kick us out after all I've done for him. I'm his sister, these are his nieces and nephew. We've earned this. The officer didn't blink at her outburst. Ma'am, if Mr. Alex says this is his place and he's told you to go, then you're trespassing. You can't just roll up to someone's house without an invitation and expect them to let you stay. I could see my parents squirming, trying to slip out of the mess, shifting uneasily under the officer's gaze. Look, officer, we didn't mean any trouble, my dad said, raising his hands. We just figured Alex would be okay with it. We've bailed him out before, and he owes us. This isn't right, the children need a place to stay. The officer's face remained steady. I get that you might have expected something, sir, but that doesn't mean you can cross someone else's boundaries or property. You need to go now, all of you. The tension in the air was so thick you could slice it. My parents exchanged glances, and I could almost feel the rage bubbling inside them, but they were out of moves. The officer stayed calm but was not about to let them cause a scene. She faced Lila and Jake. You can leave peacefully now, or we'll have to escort you out. Lila let out an annoyed snarl, burning with anger. I could tell her mind was racing, wondering if she could fight this somehow. But before she could spit out another word, the officer moved closer, her tone solid. Ma'am, this is your final notice. If you don't leave, I'll have to arrest you for trespassing in front of your children. Those words hit Lila like a heavy load. Jake tugged at her arm, whispering something urgent. Bit by bit, grudgingly, she stepped back from the entrance, shooting me a look like I had stabbed her in the back. My parents trailed behind them, and I noticed my mom's expression twist with irritation and embarrassment as they all started to walk away. Noah looked back at me, confusion written all over his face, while Mia continued to cry softly, and Ava remained mercifully asleep, oblivious to the chaos around her. As the officer guided them out, I lingered in the doorway, watching them leave. It wasn't a burst of joy, not exactly, it felt more like a tired release. The chaos, the control games, the selfishness, it was all done at last. The policewoman glanced my way before heading off. If anything else comes up, don't hesitate to call us again. All right, I replied, dipping my head. With that, my parents, Lila, Jake, and the kids were out of sight. The officer departed, ensuring the door clicked shut behind her, and just like that, my world settled back into place. It took some time to wrap my head around it all. Honestly, I hadn't realized how much their endless hovering had weighed me down. It wasn't just the moving mess, it was years of being told to drop everything for them, being the one they could manipulate when it suited them. I had never been free to claim a true sense of my own territory, my own existence. But now I was.